Finally, breaks silence on James Cagney. Humphrey Bogart was born Humphrey de Forest Bogart on December 25, 1899, in New York City. Raised in a privileged environment, Bogart was the son of Belmont de Forest Bogart, a respected heart surgeon, and Maud Humphrey, a commercial illustrator and suffragette. His upbringing in a cultured upper-middle-class household exposed him to the arts early in life, though his rebellious nature and disdain for conventional paths ultimately led him to forge his own way, first in the Navy during World War I and later on the stage and screen. Bogart's early career in show business was marked by struggle and persistence. He began in the 1920s working as a stage manager and actor in Broadway plays, appearing in minor roles that offered little recognition. However, his breakthrough came in the 1930s when he transitioned to film. Initially typecast in gangster and villain roles due to his rugged appearance and clipped speech, he made a name for himself in hard-boiled dramas produced by Warner Brothers. His performance as the cold-blooded Duke Manty in The Petrified Forest, 1936, drew significant critical acclaim and helped launch his Hollywood film career. Bogart's defining moment as a leading man arrived in 1941 with John Huston's adaptation of Dashiell Hammett's The Maltese Falcon, where he portrayed private detective Sam Spade. The film is widely regarded as a cornerstone of the film noir genre and showcased Bogart's ability to convey intelligence, cynicism, and moral ambiguity with subtle charisma. This role solidified his reputation as more than just a tough guy. It revealed his range, depth, and impeccable screen presence. Over the next decade, Bogart starred in a string of now-classic films that established him as a cinematic legend. Among the most notable is Casablanca, 1942, where he played Rick Blaine, a world-weary American expatriate torn between love and honor during World War II. The film's unforgettable lines, "Here's looking at you, kid, and we'll always have Paris," have become immortalized in popular culture, and Bogart's performance earned him global fame. His chemistry with Ingrid Bergman and his poignant portrayal of sacrifice and emotional conflict are considered some of the finest in film history. Another landmark in his career was his collaboration with Lauren Bacall, a young actress with whom he starred in To Have and Have Not, 1944. Their on-screen magnetism was palpable, and it soon translated into a real-life romance. Bogart, then in his mid-40s, married Bacall, who was 25 years younger, in 1945. Their relationship became one of the most enduring and celebrated in Hollywood history, marked by mutual respect, deep affection, and an iconic pairing in subsequent films such as The Big Sleep, 1946, Dark Passage, 1947, and Key Largo, 1948. In 1951, Bogart delivered what many critics consider the finest performance of his career in The African Queen, opposite Katharine Hepburn. Directed by John Huston, the film was shot under grueling conditions in Africa, but yielded extraordinary results. As the gruff riverboat captain, Charlie Allnut, Bogart combined humor, vulnerability, and strength in a tour-de-force performance that won him the Academy Award for Best Actor, his first and only Oscar. Despite his tough guy image, those who knew Bogart personally described him as introspective, witty, and fiercely principled. He was politically outspoken, unafraid to challenge the Hollywood establishment during the Red Scare, and helped form the Committee for the First Amendment to protest the blacklisting of fellow actors and writers. He also co-founded Santana Productions, an independent film company showing his willingness to take control of his artistic destiny, at a time when most actors were bound to restrictive studio contracts. Humphrey Bogart's personal life, particularly his marriages, reveals a complex journey through love, ambition, conflict, and finally, enduring companionship. His first marriage was to actress Helen Menken, a well-regarded stage performer, on May 20, 1926, after the couple had been romantically involved for 4 years. Menken, known for her theatrical work, particularly on Broadway, was older than Bogart and had a more established career at the time. Their union was intensely private and, by most accounts, emotionally distant. The marriage struggled under the weight of Bogart's growing ambitions, his restlessness, and their different temperaments. Additionally, Bogart was still trying to find his footing in show business, and his career uncertainties placed further strain on the relationship. The couple divorced just 18 months later on November 18, 1927, with little public comment. Though the marriage was brief, it marked the beginning of Bogart's long and often turbulent experiences with love. Soon after his first divorce, Bogart entered into his second marriage, this time with actress Mary Phillips. The two were married on April 3, 1928, and for a time they enjoyed a solid companionship. Phillips was an accomplished stage actress, recognized for her strong performances and sharp intellect. She had a well-established career in New York theater, and this difference in professional focus would eventually become a defining issue in their relationship. In the early 1930s, Bogart made the pivotal decision to move to Hollywood in pursuit of film roles, sensing that his future lay in cinema rather than the stage. Phillips, however, had no interest in leaving New York or giving up her theatrical career. This geographic and professional separation created an emotional rift. Over time, the couple began to drift apart, living almost entirely separate lives. Though their marriage formally lasted a decade, they lived more like friends than partners in the final years. Despite the growing distance between them, their split in 1938 was amicable, and the two reportedly remained on good terms thereafter, occasionally corresponding and even speaking warmly of each other in later interviews. That same year, Bogart entered his most volatile and publicized marriage, his third, with actress Mayo Methot. They were wed on August 21, 1938, during a time when Bogart was becoming increasingly visible in Hollywood. Methot, a former singer and stage actress with a tough, brassy persona, was known for her fiery temper and hard-drinking lifestyle, qualities that, for a time, mirrored Bogart's own. Initially, their relationship was passionate, marked by intense chemistry and mutual admiration. However, their marriage quickly deteriorated into a cycle of alcohol-fueled arguments, jealousy, and physical altercations. Methot was highly suspicious of Bogart's fidelity, often accusing him of affairs, and Bogart's mounting success in Hollywood only intensified her insecurity. Their violent quarrels became notorious in the film industry, earning them the tabloid nickname the Battling Bogarts. The marriage was a stormy and emotionally exhausting ordeal for both parties, and it reached its breaking point in the early 1940s as Bogart's film career soared, and his romantic entanglement with a younger co-star became undeniable. Though they officially divorced in 1945, their separation had long been apparent. The end of the marriage was bittersweet for Bogart, who had invested years trying to make the relationship work, despite its many destructive patterns. The turning point in Bogart's personal life came shortly after, when he met and fell in love with actress Lauren Bacall during the filming of To Have and Have Not in 1944. Despite a significant age difference, Bogart was 45 and Bacall just 19. The two shared an immediate and deep emotional connection. They married on May 21, 1945, just months after Bogart finalized his divorce from Method. Their union would become one of Hollywood's most legendary romances. Bacall, with her intelligence, poise, and quiet strength, brought a new sense of stability and joy to Bogart's life. In contrast to his previous relationships, their marriage was grounded in mutual respect, trust, and a shared love of literature, sailing, and politics. Though their marriage was occasionally tested by Bogart's heavy drinking and the pressures of fame, they remained devoted to one another. Together they had 2 children, a son, Stephen Humphrey Bogart, born in 1949, and named after Bogart's character in To Have and Have Not, and a daughter, Leslie Howard Bogart, born in 1952, named after the actor Leslie Howard, who had helped Bogart early in his career. The couple's home life was reportedly affectionate and intellectually stimulating, filled with conversation, camaraderie, and close-knit friendships with other stars and writers of the day. Bogart and Bacall's marriage endured until Bogart's death from esophageal cancer on January 14, 1957, bringing an end to a love story that had defied the odds and endured Hollywood's unforgiving spotlight. For decades, film historians and classic Hollywood enthusiasts speculated about the true nature of the relationship between Humphrey Bogart and James Cagney, two of Warner Brothers' brightest and most iconic stars of the golden age of Hollywood. Although both actors frequently appeared in gangster films and shared screen time in a few notable titles, they were rarely seen together outside of work, and interviews from the time seemed to suggest a cool, professional rapport rather than a personal friendship. Fans long believed that for whatever reason, Bogart had remained tight-lipped about his true feelings toward Cagney. That is, until a revealing interview surfaced years later, in which Bogart, with his trademark dry wit and understated charm, finally spoke candidly about his enigmatic co-star. In the interview, conducted late in Bogart's life and unearthed decades after his passing, he opened up in surprising depth about the man behind the tough guy persona. "Jimmy was the real deal," Bogart reportedly said. "He wasn't just a guy who could throw a punch or fire a gun on screen. He was a hell of an actor and one of the smartest guys in the business." Bogart went on to describe how he had watched Cagney evolve from a streetwise Hoover in early talkies into a nuanced performer capable of genuine emotional depth. "People think of him in Public Enemy, sure," Bogart said, referencing Cagney's breakthrough 1931 film. "But the guy could dance, sing, cry, whatever the role needed. He had range. Not everyone back then did." Bogart also addressed long-held rumors of rivalry between the two. He dismissed them with a chuckle. "There was never any bad blood, just different styles. Jimmy was all energy and instinct. I was more methodical, more measured. That made us an interesting pair on screen, but off-screen we just did our own thing." Bogart recounted their work together in The Roaring Twenties, 1939, and Angels with Dirty Faces, 1938, with a mixture of admiration and nostalgia. When you shared a scene with Jimmy, you had to bring your A-game. Not because he was trying to outshine you, but because he could outshine you without even trying if you didn't hold your own. He was that electric. Beyond their working relationship, Bogart revealed a quiet respect for Cagney's off-screen character. "He wasn't the Hollywood type," Bogart said. "Didn't care much for the spotlight, didn't go to all the parties. He had his farm, his family, his own code. That's something I always admired. He wasn't out chasing headlines. He was just trying to do good work and live his life." According to Bogart, the two men shared an unspoken understanding, a mutual respect that didn't require constant contact or public display. "We weren't drinking buddies, but there was a bond there. We were both New Yorkers, both a little cynical. Both knew this business could chew you up if you weren't careful." Bogart's remarks painted Cagney in a light rarely seen by the public. A man of conviction, loyalty, and talent, who remained grounded despite his fame. "He was never anyone's puppet," Bogart concluded. "He stood up to the studios, fought for what he believed in. I think that's why I respected him so much. In an industry full of phonies, Jimmy Cagney was the real thing." Though Bogart passed away in 1957 and Cagney in 1986, this long-suppressed interview provided a powerful postscript to their intertwined legacies. It reminded fans that behind the tough exteriors of Hollywood's most legendary tough guys were real men, men who recognized greatness in each other, even if they rarely said it aloud. And in finally breaking his silence, Humphrey Bogart added a fitting tribute to one of the silver screen's greatest talents. After signing a long-term contract with Warner Brothers, Humphrey Bogart, never one to mince words or hide his sardonic humor, quipped with a gleeful smirk that his teeth and hair would likely fall out before the agreement ended. The remark, although intended as a wisecrack, would prove to carry an eerie prescience. Bogart, who had built a career portraying tough-talking, streetwise anti-heroes, maintained a similar bravado in real life, often masking deeper concerns with biting wit. His contract with Warner Brothers had propelled him to superstardom, securing his place as one of Hollywood's most bankable and iconic leading men. Yet behind the cameras, time and habits were catching up with him. By 1955, it became evident that Bogart's health was beginning to fail. Once energetic and commanding on set, he started to show signs of wear, persistent fatigue, bouts of coughing, and difficulty maintaining his typically lean but strong physique. Around this time, he had formed a new production company following the dissolution of Santana Productions, a venture he had created earlier to gain more creative control over his projects. Eager to continue shaping his legacy and expanding his creative reach, Bogart began developing a new film entitled Melville Goodwin, USA, adapted from John P. Marquand's novel of the same name. He was slated to star as a no-nonsense charismatic military general, while his wife, actress Lauren Bacall, was cast to play a powerful female press magnate who becomes romantically entangled with the general. The film, a romantic drama with political undertones, would have reunited the legendary on-screen and off-screen couple whose chemistry had captivated audiences since To Have and Have Not. However, as Bogart's symptoms worsened, especially his chronic cough and increasing difficulty eating, which made meals painful and unpleasant, he was forced to confront the severity of his condition. Despite his drive to continue working, he ultimately had to abandon the project, a painful decision that underscored just how dire his situation had become. The film was subsequently retooled and recast, with Kirk Douglas and Susan Hayward taking on the lead roles. It was retitled Top Secret Affair and released in 1957, just 2 weeks after Bogart's death, adding a bittersweet coda to a project that had once represented his continued ambitions in film. The underlying cause of Bogart's decline was esophageal cancer, a disease almost certainly linked to his lifelong habits of heavy smoking and drinking. Bogart had been a familiar figure at Hollywood parties, often with a cigarette in one hand and a drink in the other, his lifestyle emblematic of the hard-edged characters he played. Yet when it came to his personal health, he was markedly private and stoic. For months, he refused to seek medical help or admit the seriousness of his condition, brushing off concerns and complaints from friends and family. It was only after persistent urging from Bacall, who had grown increasingly alarmed by his deteriorating condition, that he reluctantly agreed to see a doctor in late January 1956. By then, the disease had progressed considerably. On March 1, 1956, Bogart underwent a major surgery in an attempt to arrest the cancer's spread. The operation was extensive and grueling. Doctors removed his entire esophagus, 2 lymph nodes, and a rib in a desperate bid to stop the disease. Unfortunately, the surgery was unsuccessful, and he was forced to undergo chemotherapy, a grueling treatment with limited success at the time. Despite his courage, the illness continued to advance, and in November 1956, he was subjected to another surgery, by which point the cancer had metastasized to other parts of his body. Bogart's once vigorous frame began to fail him. He became so physically weak that he could no longer walk up and down the stairs of his home unaided. Ever the gallant wit, he tried to maintain a sense of humor in the face of suffering. At one point, he joked, "Put me in the dumb waiter, and I'll ride down to the first floor in style," suggesting the house's small lift be used to ferry him instead of struggling with the stairs. Eventually, the dumb waiter was converted to accommodate his wheelchair, a practical necessity that underscored how much his condition had worsened. In his final days, Bogart was surrounded by close friends and colleagues who admired and loved him deeply. On January 13, 1957, three of his dearest friends, Frank Sinatra, Katharine Hepburn, and Spencer Tracy, visited him at his home for what would be the last time. The mood was solemn, the gravity of the moment not lost on anyone present. Hepburn later recounted in an interview the heartbreak of the visit. As they prepared to leave, Spencer Tracy gently patted Bogart on the shoulder and said simply, "Good night, Bogart." Bogart, weak but mentally present, turned to his longtime friend and with a faint but gentle smile, placed his hand over Tracy's and responded, "Goodbye, Spence." According to Hepburn, Tracy was momentarily frozen. His heart stood still. He understood, as did the others, that Bogart was saying his final farewell. Humphrey Bogart lapsed into a coma the very next day. By the time of his death on January 14, 1957, he weighed only 80 pounds, 36 kilograms, a frail shadow of the man once known for his steely gaze and commanding screen presence. His passing marked the end of an era for Hollywood. A simple funeral was held at All Saints Episcopal Church in Beverly Hills, attended by close family, friends, and fellow stars. The service was dignified and modest, in keeping with Bogart's wishes, and featured music by two of his favorite composers, Johann Sebastian Bach and Claude Debussy, a final touch of elegance and introspection for a man whose legacy would continue to loom large over American cinema.